Hey, you're about to hear our brand new podcast, My Crazy Family. And if you like it, I need your help. To let other folks know that this show exists, we need reviews on Apple Podcasts. So if you got about 10, 15 free seconds, please head over to Apple Podcasts, leave us a quick review, and I'll make it worth your while. Send me a screenshot of that review, and I'll enter you into a contest to win a $500 Amazon gift card. So leave the review on Apple Podcasts, send me the screenshot to contest@crazyfampod.com. That's contest@crazyfampod.com. And later in the year, we'll randomly pick someone for that $500 Amazon gift card. So please leave that review at Apple Podcasts, then send me the screenshot. Contest@crazyfampod.com. And thanks. Mother-in-laws, they can be great or they can be downright, well, evil.
This one is definitely out of your nightmares. Boy, is this a good story. Mother-in-law threatened to curse her future daughter-in-law if she ever makes her sad or maybe keeps her son away from her. Yeah. Can you imagine holiday times with this mother-in-law?
It's not just, something's going to go bad or I'm going to be upset. It's, I'm going to curse you. A little beyond the norm today on My Crazy Family.
My
Crazy
family.
My Crazy
Family.
Never had that where someone actually wanted to try and put a curse on me, as far as I'm aware. I do question it sometimes, though.
Well, at least you've got to have goals.
Yeah, I mean, I guess if you got the ability to do so, it's one thing. But it's My Crazy Family. Welcome to the program. It's episode number 2 of the show, and we want to hear your crazy family stories. But first, be sure to press subscribe wherever you download podcasts. So you don't miss any episodes of the show. And hey, leave us a review there on Apple Podcasts. That helps other people know that we exist. If you want to share your stories, crazyfampod.com. Crazyfampod is the website to go to. You can write in your story or you can call in toll free for whatever that's worth anymore. 1-833-CRAY-FAM. 1-833-272-9326. 833.
And don't forget, you can remain completely anonymous. You don't have to use real names. You can make up whatever name you want. If you feel like, I want to get my story out, but I also don't want to embarrass anybody. Change the names, change the cities. Sometimes it just feels really good to get this crap off of your chest.
Yeah, you can call your family whatever you've ever wanted to call them today in whatever story you want to share. So if your brother feels more like a Cletus than a Bill, Cletus is the name on the story. So 833-CRAY-FAM to do just that. We'd love to hear those stories. So yeah, I mean, I with the idea of the evil mother-in-law, I've been legally married twice. I've been engaged 3 times in my life, and I would say one of them was a good one that I got along with really well.
Wow.
She is now deceased and probably haunting your home.
Yes,
and I'm not even kidding.
There's a story there.
We were talking about this before the show. My first fiance's mother actually lived in had the house that you live in before you had it, and I got along with her splendidly. We really got along really good. The relationship was, we were 18, 19, young and dumb, and thought we knew that it was a great idea, and we didn't. And we ended up breaking that off, but I have nothing but respect for them and their family. But she was fun. She was cool. I really did get along good with her. But some of the others, there's one in there that I swear to God, I would not be surprised if they were doing some sort of voodoo ritual of like, like we hate him and there's no reason to hate me.
Do you ever feel like a pain, like a sharp something in a part of your body just at a random time? Do you feel like there's like a voodoo
pin
doll or something that somebody's just twisting? Or
no, I just feel like I'm getting older and my joints are getting sore and that sort of thing. I never have the voodoo doll. Are you sure
that's what that is?
I'm pretty sure. At least I hope it is. No, never say never, I guess, to some people.
I don't know. So the story goes, I don't even know where to start. I'm 24 years old, female, recently got engaged to my fiance. He's 26. Our relationship was great. with normal bumps that any relationship has. Despite any fights or red flags, our love and understanding for each other took over, keeping us happy. We both come from the exact same cultural background and figured both sets of parents would be ecstatic about this. My parents were super understanding, even though they had their concerns. They were happy for me and showed us their support consistently. His parents, on the other hand, not quite. And as Casey Kasem would say, and here's where the story turns. And now this is where the story begins. My mother-in-law was completely against our relationship when she found out, mostly because she wanted to pick the girl that her son would marry. How many mother-in-laws want to do that? It just drives me nuts.
It's like a chance to relive what they didn't have, I think, a lot of times.
Yes.
And then they put that onto their children and think nothing of it, especially the narcissistic ones. And there's some fucking narcissistic mothers out there.
Yeah, there are. So it says, I'm not sure how their household runs, but it seems like her word always wins because of how emotional she is. She fought with my fiance for 2 months straight, day and night, using every tactic in the emotionally abusive parent book, even threatening to kill herself or run away every 2 seconds was the cherry on top. His dad and the rest of the family were switching sides every day, but seemed to be okay with the wedding just for the sake of keeping their son happy. Our extended families were involved. My parents and grandparents were stressed 24/7. I was having mental breakdowns every day because I couldn't handle some of the things that were being said about me. After all of this, she finally agreed in the beginning of February. Everyone was happy, me, my family, my fiance, his family. I think we were all genuinely convinced that this was the happy ending, but that's when the real nightmare began. I've always wanted a super close relationship with my future mother-in-law, but during this process, I realized how different we were and just prayed that my mother-in-law would not hate me and we'd stay on good terms. Once things started boiling down and me and my fiance got engaged, I don't understand that part of the story, but my mother-in-law wanted to start having everyday phone calls with me to get close. Little did I know this was a trap. Oh, she would call me every day. We'd talk for hours about random things that always revolved around me stealing her son from her, me being chubbier than she used to be. So she's fat shaming her future daughter-in-law here.
She's passive aggressively being a bitch.
Yeah. Talking about the money she has spent on me and all the gifts and money related traditions that she expects from my parents. Majority of these phone calls were filled with negative energy, you think? At one point, she even said, if you keep my son away from me and make me sad, I will curse you and your future kids, and they'll leave you at a young age too. I was shocked, and I still am, because who says things like that?
Crazy people.
I stayed quiet and just took it no matter how many things she said about me. But she recently started saying bad things revolving around money about my parents to her son. So she's getting the other parents involved in this as well.
Yeah.
So that's on me for eavesdropping, but both families are middle class. So once again, I'm not quite sure. I see that there's an issue here. My fiance has stood up for me during this whole process, knock on wood, but lately he's changed a lot as well. Every time his mom says something and I get upset, he says things like, well, she has a heart of gold. She doesn't actually mean what she says.
Bullshit.
Absolute bullshit. I'm sorry. I'm stepping out of the story for a second here. I had a fiance. No, I'm sorry. Oh, dear. We were married.
You had a husband.
I had a husband.
Felt more like an engagement.
His mom, we were high school sweethearts, and his mom was an alcoholic.
Mm-hmm.
And when she would get drunk, would say the most horrific things to me. And then the next day, my ex-husband would, well, she says bad things when she's drunk. She's really a good person.
Fuck that.
Exactly. When I'm drunk, I'm a silly drunk. I'll stand on tables and make jokes, and I'm exactly who I am, but just amplified.
Mm-hmm.
And I really believe that that's how people are when they're drunk.
Mm-hmm.
It's just their inner self comes out, but it's really amplified and over exaggerated.
Yeah.
And I'm sorry, this woman, this is got evil all over it. And to have this mother-in-law in your life is going to be the most horrific thing for this marriage. I don't see this marriage working.
No, and it probably will not. The problem is you're going to have to convince the son that he needs to create boundaries with mom.
Right.
And unless he does that, because literally the whole thing hinges on that. There's nothing that she's going to do to fix this. She's never going to convince her that, oh, this is really cruel and unusual. The mother's going to think this probably about anybody that the son is with in general, because there's an unhealthy bond there to begin with. There's no one that's going to please her. So she needs to know it's not just her. But if she wants this to work, the person, it's like hitting rock bottom. You really kind of got to get there before you know it's like, oh, shit. And he essentially has to hit rock bottom with his mom and feel the pain that she's feeling because it's his fiance and say, this ain't okay. So either he sits down and sets up boundaries and talks with mom and says, look, I'm not going to tolerate this. This is not okay. If you continue to do this, I'll give you a chance. I'll give you a chance to fix this because I'm aware of it and this hurts me. And if you continue to do this, we're going to have very limited communication, if any. And put it out there. And then again, this goes to her making a choice. It goes to the mom saying, okay, I'll fix this, which hopefully, likely no, but you got to give people can change sometimes. And if it doesn't, then he has to stick with it. He has to stick with his word and say, okay, gave you a chance. This is my life over here now. He's not married to his mom. He's married to her or engaged to her. So either he moves forward with his life in that direction, and mom can certainly be a part of it if she likes to play by sane, nice, kind, humanistic rules. But if she doesn't, she's essentially a terrorist to your marriage. And you don't negotiate with terrorists, and you don't tolerate them, and you don't create grounds for them to fester on in your life, which would be your new married life. And if you continue to let them in and let the door open, guess what the terrorist is going to do every time? They're going to try and destroy your marriage in a very passive-aggressive way. So at some point, you got to make those boundaries and stick by them. And there's really no other way around that. I'm sorry. I've been down that road. I had a terroristic mother-in-law once. And eventually it got to the point where the significant other completely cut them out. And it wasn't.
But that's what has to happen if your marriage is going to work. The mother-in-law, it's usually a mother-in-law, needs to let go of her son.
Yeah.
And that's what's not happening is she still feels like she is part of that bubble, that inner circle. And it's not that you need to cut the mother out, but she's not as involved in the son's life as she used to be. She's not nurturing the son anymore. That role has changed and she's not letting go. So if she can't let go, it's time to be done.
It is. And you got to be careful if you're the fiance of the person with the crazy mother, because the person, your fiance, needs to come to this decision on their own accord. It can't be something too where it's like you give them an ultimatum, because that is not should either. You seem to be firm and be like, I'm not going to put up with this anymore from your mom, and I'm not going to see her. And not, you can't talk to your mom. You have to be like, I'm not going to see her. I'm not going to have any involvement, and I don't want to hear about her if she continues to act this way. So it kind of does put the person into a corner of like, well, I'd rather try and make this work or try and find a way to fix this. And if it doesn't work, then the natural choices should come along. If somebody makes the wrong choice, then somebody makes the wrong choice, and you kind of got to live with that. But ideally, if this is going to work, he needs to realize this person is not good for their own well-being or anybody else in that relationship.
Well, what do you think too about their ages? It's real easy when you're, you just mentioned that you were 18, 19 and stupid. These two are 24 and 26, and it's real easy to think that you've got things figured out, or
easy to think that things will work out.
Yeah. I mean, they're young. That's 24 and 26. You haven't lived yet.
No.
This is young. This is really young. And to be having these problems before you get married, what happens when you throw some kids into the mix?
Oh, yeah. And then you have that dynamic, and she'll be trying to turn your kids against you. Guaranteed. Somebody like this, that's what they do. They are obsessed with power. They're obsessed with controlling everything, and everything is going to have to be their way. If you like their way and you like that, go ahead, carry on. Nothing will change, and you'll live in hell. Or you set up boundaries now, and you stick with them, and hopefully they live by them. If they don't, then you set up more boundaries. And if the boundaries end up being a fucking wall that they can't climb over, then that's what it ends up being. But you start, you don't go in, guns a-blazing. Just start out with reasonable and, amp up the ammunition as would be. Again, I'm not saying literally shoot anybody or kill anybody. That's a metaphor.
No, emotional ammunition.
Yes, exactly.
Well, and speaking of boundaries, a 19-year-old male, we've got a story from him. It says, where do I even begin? From being abused as a child to being manipulated, clowned, even shamed in front of others to stroke my dad's ego. I am a 19-year-old male. I'm currently living with the aforementioned father and my sister as well. I have been nonstop taking mental, physical, and even psychological abuse. Dude reads me like a book every day, so he can either point out a random flaw or manipulate me or my sister into doing bull crap for him, it says. Oh, and I forgot to mention, I haven't been able to keep a penny to my name living with him. All my money ends up going to his bills or his other needs, according to his excuses. Everything is apparently my fault because I'm holding him back. Yet when I mention gaining independence from him and moving on to live my own life as an adult, he always shuts it down. He believes I'm wanting to destroy him in some medieval throne father-son takeover scenario. In reality, I need to live my own life. I cannot be wasting my time trying to fulfill his fantasies, taking verbal abuse from him, or him taking his anger out on us because of situations that are outside of my sister and my control. There's, of course, more to the story. The list goes on, but the more I mention it, the more I feel I give his ego power. Wow.
Yeah.
First of all, 19 and you want to live your own life. Kudos to you. Kids these days tend to be staying with their parents much longer.
Yeah.
And they don't want to move out. So I think that's great that you want to get going on your own, but I don't understand what needs does dad have that you have to give him every penny that you've made?
You don't. That's, again, you're being abused. And when you're 19, you don't know what you don't know. And you may think, well, you're going to make excuses. Well, dad's being dad. It's okay. And, he needs this and whatever you're telling yourself, it's bullshit. And it's not your fault, but it's bullshit that you're taking in and living your life by. And that's where you need to recognize that and say, I got to get out of this bullshit because this isn't normal. It's not normal. It's not normal at all. And you didn't realize the kind of bullshit storm you were going into because these people that are doing this to you are the people that you should be able to trust. And maybe you did trust for a long time and they didn't do this to you. But then something changed and they are doing this to you now. So you don't want to stay there in that sort of situation. Again, a lot of these things, they lead to narcissism, but they also very much are all about boundaries. That's the biggest thing. We're not good at setting up boundaries. We're not. And that's where if they can do that, just like I talked about in the last one, you keep going and you can live this, life of frustration and you'll probably, make it okay, but you're not going to be happy. Or you start setting up those boundaries and see what happens. I think the scary thing is going down the boundary road because there's a very real possibility when you set up boundaries that person could say, fuck you and walk away. But if they do, that's where you have to ask yourself, well, did that person ever really care for me? Or did they really, and that's a hard chip to swallow too, just grasping that concept. It's maybe not that they ever cared for you. It's that do they currently care for me? Because at one time they probably, did. but their narcissism has led them down such a road that a lot of times what they're thinking, the way they're thinking, they're not aware of it. It's not an excuse, but you just kind of got to look at it as, are they capable of behaving in a mature way, in a way that should reflect what their role is? And sometimes they're just not. And that's a hard one to swallow, because you can look at you yourself and say, I could do that. I could eat. Yes, you could. But a lot of people, they can't. And it's almost as clear as saying, someone who has bad eyesight, looking at them and they can't see well. And you saying, well, why can't you see that stop sign? It's clearly a stop sign. They can't see it. It's not part of how their mind works. And that's a shame. But it is also, one of those realities that we don't like coming up to the edge of and tackling. So we just keep putting it to the side. Boundaries are never set. And chaos just continues to ensue, and it becomes a cycle, because you end up having kids, and then they you end up doing the same shit to them, and they end up to their kids. Somebody's got to say stop at some point, and this shit needs to get under control. But it's up to you. You can be the one to break it and say stop. And
that's the thing. He never did say how old his sister is, but I wonder, if they're close in age, could they move out together?
Yeah.
And support each other, financially and mentally to get away from dad. And I don't know, he didn't indicate if dad is somehow disabled and needs to have somebody care for him, or if he's just a prick,
Yeah. I mean, if it's something like, then it still shouldn't be you, unless you want to be the caregiver. And that's a choice that you have. If it's not you, then somebody else can be there. But in any way, shape, or form, not allow your child to take the money that they've earned and then refuse to let them leave. Number one, you have every choice in the world to leave, unless he's literally holding you hostage.
Right.
Then no, he may be saying that you can't leave, but the reality is you can get the fuck out of there. You just have to do it. So make that choice if that's what you want. You're 19. You can legally do it. Again, unless he's locking you in a closet, you should be able to do that.
Nope, 100%. Absolutely.
So there is an element here of you don't want to continue to just be the victim of someone else. You have to realize that you have power too, and step up, take your power. And that power, you may not feel very confident in it right now, but it certainly is enough to say, I'm not dealing with this. And you can legally get yourself the fuck out of there. Don't give him the money when he asks for it. Keep it. Don't tell him about some of the money. Start putting it somewhere that he doesn't know. Save up enough to get the fuck out of there. Go stay on a friend's couch for a month. At 19, people do that sort of shit. And,
we've all done it.
And it's completely normal. So do that. Then you got your money. Start saving it after a month or two. Get a plan of where you're putting that, where you're going to go rent, or what you're going to do. Maybe find a roommate. Maybe you got a friend who wants a roommate. Find some way to get the fuck out of there and be in control of your money, and then reevaluate. See how that relationship lands when you're not there and you're not giving him the money. And that's how the cards fall. And it's a tough pill to swallow for everybody, but it's fucking life.
Amen to that. And speaking of money, our last story revolves around a life insurance policy. And this one's a doozy. This one really caught my attention. My parents took out a life insurance policy on me when I was really young. And in 1997, they borrowed $2,000 against it. I was born in 1985. Apparently, when I turned 18, I assumed liability of the loan that they took out. And that $2,000 loan has now gone up to $3,000 in the last 20 years. They haven't paid it off in that time, and they have more than enough to do it, but they're still hesitant. I currently live next door to my parents with my wife and kids in the house that my great uncle built and left to my mother, who said she would have signed it over after the 5-year delay my parents' lawyer advised them on before signing it over to me. It's been 6 years. I give them $500 a month in rent, basically to cover property taxes. With all that said, my wife and I are looking for a bigger house because this one is too small. It's a 1-bedroom, and I have it set up like a studio apartment. Now I'm looking into cashing out this insurance policy to add to our home fund. If I cash it out with the loan still on it, I only get $2,000. If I didn't have the loan, I could get $5,000 in cash value. It's a $10,000 death benefit, and I already have life insurance elsewhere. I told them I'm not going to pay them rent for the next 6 months and instead put that toward the loan. In reality, I'm going to cash it out and put the rent money into the savings for the house. I feel that I am right in doing this, yet it doesn't feel right. Then again, why the fuck didn't they pay this off? They haven't helped me at all with any student loans and such, although my mother holds the house over my head, which is why I told her to keep it, and I'm going to get the fuck out. And they have always borrowed from my grandparents and great uncle for our repayment. My parents have always been selfish as fuck and have always looked out for their own good.
Mm-hmm.
The situation with this loan is just pissing me off because I feel as though they have stolen from me. Instead of looking out for me and my brother years ago and maybe even setting things aside for us, they've used this benefit as income for themselves and just left it for 20 years. Ouch.
Well, a life insurance policy, I know you can borrow against some of them, but a life insurance policy is the life insurance policy on the individual who wrote?
Yes.
Okay, so that would be money that, I mean, it's not money that they would get, I guess. I mean, unless that person tried to borrow against it, but the life insurance policy that's on that person was taken out by the parents. So I don't understand where this person thinks the money is theirs.
That's a really good way of thinking of it, because when I read this email, I took it the way that they're taking it, that, this is really selfish, but I like your perspective as well.
Because that life insurance policy doesn't transfer to that individual. I mean, I think I don't even know if it ever transfers to that individual, even if they die, because they took it out as, I mean, if they took it out selfishly to take money out of it, that's one thing. But again, it doesn't really reflect on the person. It should never reflect on that person's credit or anything, really, for that matter. That parents,
yeah, it shouldn't. No,
so I don't see where this is being detrimental to them, or why, even if they did pay it back, it's not going to you. You're not getting, it's not like that's money that you're going to get. That just goes to the policy. Now, could you borrow it out? Sure, but you would have to pay it back too. But I don't even know if you'd have the rights to borrow it out because you didn't make the policy. The policy that the person's on does not necessarily mean that that's the person that's not who collects. They would collect if you died. And a lot of times parents will get those sort of things. There's like a Gerber one, and there's this one and that one. And it's usually like a $10,000 policy, and it's designed to cover funeral expenses should the child die at some point. So it's not a burden on the parents. All these years later, if they still have it and they still borrowed against it, there's really nothing wrong with that. The fact aside, maybe that they're driven nuts by their parents' constant horrible financial decisions, and maybe they're fearing that sometime that's going to come back on them. But again, it really doesn't, unless there was things taken out in your name. An insurance policy is not one of them. If they took out a loan in your name, if they took out the loan in your name and you are the debtor, then yes, then you got a case there. But if they didn't, which I don't think that's how that works, then you really wouldn't be, there's nothing for you to worry about. It's not your money to begin with, and it wouldn't be your money if they paid it back.
Now, see, he thinks that he indicated that when he turned 18, the repayment became his responsibility.
I don't understand how that would even be. That would mean that you would sign a contract when you were not of age to sign a contract.
Well, yeah, that's a really good point.
So that's not how those things work. If that was how that was, now, could this be what's going on? Could the parents have explained to the child that now it's your responsibility because they don't want to pay it back and they'd rather have someone else pay it back? Sure, that may have been presented that way, but I can probably assure you, if you were to call this life insurance company and ask the fucking details of it, it's not going to be that you have to pay it back, especially if that agreement was made when you were a minor, because you couldn't legally make that agreement when you were a minor.
That's a really good point.
So maybe your parents are telling you some crazy, twisted shit to try and, swindle you into paying some bills that you aren't obligated to pay. And that may be what's going on. But this is not your money. It's not yours to worry about. It's not yours to collect on. It's not yours to pay back. I'm just wondering what sort of line of shit they're telling you that this is how you feel, because that's not how these things typically work. There's probably other things in line if you were over 18 and you can get yourself into some trouble where you're co-signing or something with your parents and they're like, we're not going to pay it. It will still lie on you. But something like this does not sound like that. But it's got to be frustrating as hell having parents like that.
It totally brings about the fact that there's a bigger problem here. The fact that it sounds like they don't have a good relationship. It's not just the life insurance policy. And as you were talking there, I looked something up from Forbes.com. The so-called liability of the policyholder never exists as a personal liability. It is never a debt, but it is merely a deduction in account from the sum of what the insurer ultimately must pay. So anything that they would pay out because a loan was taken, they just deduct it.
Yeah. So if you were to die and your parents were owed $10,000 and they borrowed $3,000 against it, your parents will get $7,000. So
this is simple math.
They'd still get paid if you died. So that's where you got to look out. If they really need the money, I'd be watching my back. But if I'm not saying that seriously, but who the fuck knows? I watch a lot of Dateline. But no, I mean, you should not be there. If anything, they're trying to swindle you to convince you that you should be paying that back so they don't have to. And if you don't, there's nothing that's going to happen. It's on them. And eventually the policy will expire and it's done. And that's it. And if anybody's going to be, if anyone's looking to get credit or to be taken to collections, it's your parents. It's not you.
Yeah, exactly.
So you have nothing to worry about there. From what I understand, again, contact the place and just, understand how it all works. But
and it sounds like they've got like an Everybody Loves Raymond kind of situation where they're living next door.
Yeah.
You got to get further away.
Oh my God, get the fuck out of there. The further away, the better, especially from toxic human beings like that. I've been in, not my parents, but I've seen situations like this, very similar. It reminded me of some people I know that have always fucked up their life financially, like every fucking turn. Wrong choice. Broke, going to somebody's parents. Can I borrow this? Can I borrow that? Can I get my inheritance early? Can you buy me a house? Can you buy me a car? Can you buy the kids' school clothes? Can you do everything for me that I should be doing as a responsible fucking adult? I've seen it. And you know what? These people don't change. And if you continue to sit there and give and give and give and give, if you are, whether the child that's giving or the parent of the irresponsible adults, they never fucking learn. They don't. I've seen them. I mean, they're close to death now and nothing has ever fucking changed. And guess what? Those wonderful magical skills that those people have of not having any sort of financial sense whatsoever, they tend to pass down to their children.
Yes, they do.
And then those children make absolutely horrifically shitty choices and they don't realize it till it's too late. And it's just it's like constant victim mentality that many people sit in rather than going, fuck, something's wrong here. Like, I didn't have a good example. How do I learn how to do this? It's a lot of people just keep going, well, it's a victim. I mean, it's this person's fault. It's that person's fault. It's this. It's like, no, it's you. It's you because you never fucking learned it. You got shitty parents who never taught it to you. And you should probably take the initiative to learn it. And if you don't, you're going to live a very confused headache of a life financially. It's your choice.
In today's world, I don't see that there's any excuse to not learn this stuff. You've got YouTube, you have TikTok, you have all of these sources that 20 years ago we didn't have.
But it's so much easier to be the victim and go on social media and complain about not having money than having 100 people who you barely know saying, yeah, man, fuck the system. Fuck that. Fuck them. Fuck that. Fuck the man. Fuck the person. They're stealing from you. That's right. Those people need to pay more in taxes, which, by the way, people who do make money pay fuckloads of taxes more than people who don't. It's utterly insane. You can argue the bigger companies, there's some things that should be done there. But individual, holy fuck. It's poor decision making. It's poor education. But at some point you're an adult and you need to make the fucking choice yourself to educate yourself, because not everybody's going to hold your hand and say, here's how you do it. You probably could have gathered that by now by having shitty parents who didn't hold your hand and led you down bad paths. So now you're an adult. It's up to you to do that. And it's easy.
You're on a really good rant, but you know what really pisses me off? I didn't need to learn how to make a stuffed animal in home ec. I could have learned how to manage my finances.
Yeah.
Oh, fuck that stuffed animal I had to make.
The education system is so learning how to balance a checkbook was like an elective class, and home finance was an elective class. These should be fucking. They should be
mandatory.
They should be teaching kids. They should not be waiting till like the end years of high school either. They should start teaching this shit at like 5th, 6th grade, because it's not complicated math. It's very basic math. It's just what you have is what you can spend. What you don't have, you can't spend. And credit cards will show people how dramatic interest rates are and how that shit piles up. It's not just like a little bit here, a little bit. Like, you want to spend like 5 times an item than you should be just because you really want it right now but don't need it. Go ahead, put it on the credit card. Show responsible credit card use, because all we really hear is like, oh my God, they're absolutely horrible, don't ever get one. Or we hear people. You don't really hear from people who manage them successfully, because that's not an exciting story.
Exactly.
But you know what? I manage them successfully. I pay my own off every fucking. I pay it off every week. I go and I only spend what I know I have, and I pay it off every week. And you know what? I get 2% cash back, and by the end of the year, I have several $100s worth of like Amazon credits, because I just pay it off like a debit card. So it's not hard to do that if you use it responsibly. If you feel you're going to use it irresponsibly, use a debit card. Okay. But then again, we're talking about self-control. We're not talking about the credit card having a flaw in it. We're not talking about that system having a flaw in it. We're talking about people having self-control with their money and understanding that they are accountable for their choices. It's not the credit card system ripping you off. It's you making dumb choices.
But how did you learn that? Where did you learn that?
Because
was that on you, or was that from your parents?
It was on me, because they don't even have. I don't think they had credit cards half the time. They don't have debit cards. They pay with cash on so many things. It's like 1895 with my parents. But they barter, like wool and shit and hides. No, they don't. But
like Little House on the Prairie.
It's really fucking weird. But no, like, I learned it myself. How did I learn it? Because I realized I didn't want to pay 5 times the amount of something that I could pay for, and so I could spend more. It was very easy to figure out. It wasn't rocket science to me. I learned it the first time I think I really had a firsthand experience with an interest rate was I bought a Dell computer in 2006 or something. And I did the finance quote unquote plan. And then I did the math on it, because it sounds real easy and lovely at first. And then I realized, holy shit, like, I'm going to pay like 2 or 3 times for this computer if I do this. And immediately I just took out of my, luckily I had saved money. I've never had money handed to me ever in my life. Everything I've ever earned, it's because I earned it. There was no trust fund or, inheritance or anything. Anything I have, it's because I got it. So I had enough to pay it off. And I thought, it's more than I wanted to, but like, fuck it, I'm paying this off. And then I started learning about credit cards later in life. And I always had a debit card. And I started going, well, this isn't bad if you just do it correctly. If you pay it off and use it like a debit card and manage it like a debit card, which you can. There's a gazillion fucking tools to do it with, especially today with apps and everything that show you down to the moment you buy something, you get an alert. And I learned, if I use this like this, I'll get these points or I'll get this cash back. I might as well run it through that. And if I do it responsibly and I don't go crazy with it and do dumb choices that I can't pay off, I'll earn that money back. And over the years, it's been thousands and thousands and thousands of dollars of free shit. because I did it responsibly.
If you do it right, they give you even more incentives because they want you to use the card.
They do. Now, they ideally, they love people who don't pay it back because, yes, they make a shitload of money on those people. You know what they call those people? Dumb. And it's just, it's one thing if you need to use the card to get by, you're going to put more on it right now. That's understandable. People get in those situations. I've been in those situations, but you need to make it a choice to pay that back as soon as possible. If you're doing that, you're not dumb. If you're just sitting there running around buying whatever the fuck you want because your limit's $30,000 and you have $500 in your bank account, you're fucking dumb. And that's just that's all it is. You're dumb.
Well, you're setting yourself up to be a victim is what's happening.
Yes, and then you'll play the victim. So don't do that. Just spend within your means. And when you do that, you end up having more means and more means and more means because you're not digging yourself into debt forever. And it's not rocket science. Like I said, I've done it myself, coming from nothing, making next to nothing. Fuck, when I worked in radio back in the day, I think they paid me like $16,000 a year when I worked with you. So I was barely getting by. I luckily had like a super cheap apartment, and the rest I spent on Cosmos at a bar down the road.
Yes, you did.
And I'm not even kidding. And that's what I did. Now, was that always smart? No, but I never put like $700 worth of Cosmos on a credit card either. I paid cash or my debit card. So money management is not rocket science. You just need to, take 10 minutes to figure it out, and it may change your fucking life. Or you can be the victim and complain all the day on Facebook and this and that, how nothing's fair to you and the world hates you, and you'll have plenty of sympathizers who are in the same boat. But guess who's happy at the end of the day? People who get control, or people who just like to bitch about it forever? It's not the people bitching. So,
nope. Great point.
No,
absolutely.
I've run into that a few times with people I've met as an adult with having a kid. You meet parents here and there, and you become friends on Facebook. And there's some I've just had to fucking block left and right because it's like all they do is post about this and that and how this isn't fair to them. And then you see then you can see visually all the shit they've bought and the poor decisions they're making. And you go, okay, if you don't have much money, there's so many ways to live cheaper. I would be I'd be very good at being poor. I was very good at being poor.
I was going to say, in radio, it seems like such a glamorous job, but unless you make it big in a very large market, like a big city, like a Minneapolis, Chicago, New York, you don't make much money.
No.
You're poor.
So I should say I was very good at being poor because I knew how to manage it. I knew how to it doesn't have to be horrible. You don't buy brand name shit. There's plenty of good generics out there. There's plenty of places to shop where you can get shit for very reasonably cheap. And yes, prices are going up dramatically. But again, if you know where to go and you do a little digging, there's a lot of places you can get shit and survive and live relatively comfortably. I'm talking a realistic amount of money here. I'm not talking like you're making $100 a week. I'm talking, you have a job, a minimum wage job. Not easy to live on by any fucking means. No. And almost impossible, I think, to rent right now on that sort of a thing. But if you can make enough for that, there are ways of getting by. It's not easy. I've done it too. But going into debt is not the solution to it by any means. That's the last fucking thing you want to do. Unfortunately,
it's a delayed problem is what it is.
Unfortunately, our society tells everybody, oh, just do this. Just take borrow on this, borrow on that. And then we believe it. And then other people get rich and you don't. And then you're looked at as dumb. But when you don't have to be, because you were marketed to one way or another, but that's where you got to wake the fuck up and go, yeah, shouldn't follow that. Not a good idea. But yeah, I've had plenty of dumb moments in my life, but you learn. That's the thing. You learned. And then
and it's okay to have dumb moments. It's okay to have those, oh shit, what did I do?
Yeah.
As long as you learn from it and try not to do it again.
Exactly. But that's the thing. We are in the place where don't call somebody dumb. Call them, say that they've made choices that were, I'm trying to think how you would word it, or it'd be
They just made poor choices.
Now, you don't even say poor because that could hurt somebody's feelings. It's like
Oh, geez.
you made the right choices for the mindset or the set of tools that you were given, which in some cases may make kind of sense. But I believe there should be at least a little bit amount of shame in there, because shame fucking motivates to a certain extent. Not beat the person down, but enough to go, I'd feel really embarrassed if I told somebody I did this, so I'm not going to do that again. That, I don't know, that seems to work. It has worked for society for, I don't know, thousands of years. Somehow in the last.
That brings us back to our crazy family, doesn't it?
Exactly.
Shaming.
Yeah. That like it went to one extreme, and then it really fucked everything up. Instead of just like slight nudges here and there, it went to like utter just break the person down to nothing. And it should be something a little more light on that, but enough to motivate. That's the key. But it's much easier just to go, you're a fucking moron. Like, no, like, I get it. You only know what you know. But then you take somebody by the hand and show them what you know and why you know. Don't just tell them why they're a fucking idiot. Like I kind of did today. I said, yeah, these are dumb things. I was dumb when I did this. You'd be dumb if you did it too. But here's what I learned. So take that and don't make the same mistakes. It's that easy. It's not hard, but
The more you know, from Tony.
It's more compelling when David Schwimmer gives that out on one of those on NBC. All right,
Yes.
that's going to wrap up today's episode of My Crazy Family. If you have a crazy family story, we want to hear it. 1-833-CRAY-FAM, 1-833-272-9326. Call that number 24/7 and share your story with us, or write in at crazyfampod.com. Takes you right to the page where you fill out the little form and share your story, and we may share it on the show. Do it completely anonymously. Check it out. We can't wait to hear from you. Until next time, for Stacy, I'm Tony. Thanks for listening to My Crazy Family.
My
crazy
family.
family.
My
Crazy
family.
Hey, you got a crazy family?
We want to hear all about it.
Got a brand new podcast. It's called My Crazy Family.
And boy, we know there are some stories out there, and sometimes it just makes you feel better to get it off your chest, or to hear about somebody else's crazy family. It lets you know that maybe yours isn't as nuts as you thought.
Yeah, the bar gets set pretty damn high, trust me. You can call in your stories right now at 1-833-CRAY-FAM. That's 1-833-CRAY, CRAY-FAM, or write in your story at the website crazyfampod.com. That's crazyfampod.com.
And by the way, you don't have to use your real name. It's totally okay if you just want to make up names, but you just need to get rid of this information. We are your place.
You're not going to believe what you will hear on this podcast and the insane things that some families have put their loved ones through. 1-833-CRAY-FAM, or write in at crazyfampod.com.
Stay tuned for our official launch date.
And start getting us those stories right now. crazyfampod.com.
My
crazy
family.
family.
My
crazy
family.